Hello, my name's Bella Edgley. Welcome to my channel where I talk mostly about watercolour painting. Now my plan for today was to talk about granulating watercolour paints because I've just bought a few of them, and I was going to talk about granulating medium as well. I'm not going to focus on that. I will touch on that, but I'm actually preparing for an exhibition and I don't have an awful lot of time. So what I thought I would do is I would talk about what I've sort of currently got on my desk, and I've actually had to retreat to my living room because I work in my conservatory. It's a bit messy in here and it's really hot, so I've set everything up on my kitchen table, and really I think it's a good excuse to talk about mounting on a board, framing, and also actually painting directly on a board. And I'm going to talk a little bit about ready-made frames and, getting paintings framed by a professional. And I will touch a little bit on some sketches I did where I used the granulating watercolour. So that's something a bit different, but I will talk a little bit about that as well. Okay, so I've got two other videos. One where I talk about how to mount paper onto a wooden board, and I've got another one where I talk about framing, different framing options. So I'm going to try not to cover things that I've covered in that one, and instead I'm going to talk about maybe a few things that didn't come up in those ones. So the first thing that I'm going to start with is the fact that most of my paintings on board, I've mounted the paper directly onto the board, and I've got an example here which I haven't cut the edge, but you can see hopefully that the paper is stuck onto the board. Now another option that I think is really nice is to actually paint directly onto the board, and that's what I've done here. And this is an experiment. I did do a previous experiment and I'm going to put a photo of that in here, and I'm really just testing it out at the moment. So what you have to do is to basically prepare a board, and I've got one here which I've put gesso on, and then afterwards you can put a few layers of a watercolour ground. This is a Daniel Smith watercolour ground, and then after that you can just basically paint on top with the watercolours. Now it does require a bit of experimentation because it's a different feel to paper. What I've found is that the paint sinks in quite a bit more, so you have to sort of compensate for that by maybe doing a few layers or by putting a little bit more pigment on. And the edges have a different quality as well. So like I said, I've only just started experimenting with this, but I just wanted to sort of introduce it to you in case you're interested in it, and maybe I'll do a longer video on it if it's something that people do find interesting. So the other thing that I want to talk about, I did talk about in the video where I show how to mount the paper onto the board, but I just want to talk about it again because it's something I was doing yesterday, and that is that you don't have to spray your painting with a varnish before you put the wax on. But what I understand is that if you do, you can give your paintings a UV protection because the wax doesn't give a UV protection. And I had this this painting is actually quite big, so I can't get the whole thing in the camera shot, but this is quite a big painting and I'm going to have it up at the exhibition, and I really want to make sure that as I'm going to be selling it, I feel that if I can tell people that it's got a UV protection as well, that's just a sort of additional thing, an additional sort of selling point really. Okay, so what I did was I just put 2 coats, and I actually used the gloss one, not the matte one. I put 2 coats, and then I'm going to be putting my cold wax medium on top of this, and then that's going to be finished, and I'm just going to hang it in the exhibition like that. Now, as you can see, it doesn't have a frame because I didn't have time to get a frame made. But that, I think, is what's great about putting your work on a wooden board, is that if you do have an exhibition coming up and you don't have time for framing, then you can still present your work like that on the board but without a frame. Another thing that I thought I'd talk about, which again it does come up in my other videos, but this is a little bit of a sort of additional information about ready-made frames and bespoke frames, because I think it's always useful to actually see something to visualize it. So this painting here has been framed by a professional framer, and that means obviously that your board can be any size and they'll just fit the frame to the board. But another option is to actually buy your wooden panel like this and buy a ready-made frame that goes with it. So these two are from Jackson's, and you do just need to make sure that the frame is made for the board that you're buying. So this is a 9 by 12 inch board, and this frame is made to fit a 9 by 12 inch board or canvas. And the board is actually, you know, it's not, the frame is deeper, so when I frame it I'll have to raise it up a bit. I just wanted to show that because that's something that I just bought recently. Okay, so hopefully that information has been interesting for you. Now, like I said, this is a little bit more of a sort of studio diary really. So this next thing is what I wanted to make this video about, and again I'll make a longer one about this probably next week or the week after. But I bought these amazing granulating paints, and 2 of them are from Daniel Smith and 2 of them are from Horadem Aquarelle, which is Schminkel. Is it Schminkel or Schmink? Schmink, I think. If you watch any of my other videos, or if you've joined me in any of my online classes, you'll know that I'm always going on about using the same colours. And I think I went on about it so much that I sort of was boring myself, and I thought, why not experiment a little bit with some different colours? And I went to the shop with my daughter and she chose the colours, so I was really, really experimental with them, and I was really happy with them. And I did these little sketchbook paintings, and I think you can see in the foreground, you know, the effect of these granulating colours. So this video has been a little bit of a sort of more like a studio diary really. And I also want to say that I'm doing an online workshop on the 13th of May at 2:30 Greenwich Mean Time, which is 9:30 Eastern Standard Time if you're in the US. And I'm going to do that on wet watercolours and using those for sort of semi-abstract landscapes. So if you want to join me, that would be really fun to see you there. And also I do have my pre-recorded online course available, which is called Minimalist Watercolour Landscapes and Beyond. So that's available if you can't make the live sessions. So I hope you have a really good week, and I hope to see you again in the next one. Okay, thank you, bye.